Yo, it's the Frickin' Frack Show, a podcast for the fans by
This
the
is the
fans.
Frickin' Frack Show, a podcast for the fans by the fans.
Frickin' Frack Show, a podcast for the fans by the fans.
All right, guys, you're watching the Frickin' Frack Show podcast for the
fans by the fans.
Kayla, my man, what's happening, brother?
Trying to scare you, man. What's going on, man?
Halloween, man. Halloween 2021. It's hard to believe that October's almost over, brother.
It actually doesn't feel like Halloween or anything to me. It just feels like another day. I don't know. It just doesn't feel the same like it did years ago, I guess you can say.
Yeah, it hits a little bit different. It seems like to me with two kids, Halloween is a bit more expensive than what it used to be. That's kind of what hits home for me, you know?
Yeah, I mean, going into these stores and seeing the costumes and the prices now. I mean, I don't remember the prices in the 90s, but I would guess it's probably not, $70 for a some kind of Disney branded costume, you know?
Yeah, you ain't kidding, man. You ain't kidding. We went to Spirit Halloween a week ago or whatever, thinking we were ahead of the game, and nope. Not only was everything sold out, bro. I mean, you're talking the things that were left. You're not kidding, man. You're looking at $60 to $70 per costume. Times are changing, brother.
It is, but you can still go to the store and buy those Scream masks with the blood that you pump on your face,
right.
you know,
That's
for
right,
like
man.
$10. So
that's
perfect.
Right. That's what I should have just done. Here's a Scream mask for you. Here's a Scream mask for you, and they'd be like, "What is this? I have no idea what this is."
Perfect introduction to introduce the kids to Scream, huh?
There you go. Brother, man, we have a jam-packed show tonight. I'm very much looking forward to it, man. 63 episodes in, man. This is crazy.
63 episodes, and this one is really most exciting one for me personally because I grew up with this kid. I'm going to call him a kid because he's younger, but this guy's father, music, who has influenced so many, including myself, to not play drums or nothing because I was never good with rhythm, but singing wise and everything, and using harmonica, pedals and effects and different things. This is this guy is just truly doing some amazing work, especially with growing up in a household with a household name and everything. He's what I would say is continuing the legacy, which is really, really exciting. And one of the best things is I don't really know this guy personally, and that's why we want to get him on the show so he can tell his story from the beginning to now,
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. Whether this is your first time joining us or you've been along for the ride for 63 episodes, you know the drill. Let us know where you're watching from. And we're excited to have you guys, whether this is your first time or not. Welcome to the show. You may know this guy from Genesis. You may know this guy from Better Strangers. You may know his father, Phil Collins. But tonight on episode 63, we get to know the man, Nic Collins himself. Everybody, Nic Collins. What's up, buddy?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the kind words, man. I appreciate it.
And don't forget his sister, man.
Yeah, sorry. We're making things happen.
Which, by the way, I'll just say I didn't know Lily was your sister until maybe a week ago.
Really?
I followed her. Her work as an actress for years, man, and never really stuck to me. Oh yeah, her last name is Collins.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's funny because sometimes, like, my whole life it's pretty much been like, you go to like school and it's like, oh, you're Phil Collins' son. But it started becoming, oh, you're Lily Collins' brother. I'm like, whoa, never heard that, put it that way before. And we had this one time we were on vacation, and my dad was asked to take a picture of a fan with Lily. And so it was my dad sitting there with the camera taking a picture of them, which was, it was pretty funny.
That's crazy, man.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic, dude. I mean, I love that. That's a great way to start off the show, man. That's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, so as we discussed, you know, you're involved in all of these crazy things. I mean, it seems like you're constantly going. I want to go back before life got busy. I want to go back before you guys moved over. I want to go back to where it all started, man. Where are you from? You know, where were you born?
I was born in Geneva, Switzerland. My mom is Swiss, and then my dad's English. So kind of grew up in an English household kind of vibe, but really it was in Switzerland. And then when I was about like 11 is when I moved over to Miami here in the US, and I've just been living here since, you know, eager to leave.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we all want to leave the place we call home, you know, and which is, you know, why everybody goes on vacations all the time. You know, I have some people, over here where I live. They love going on vacation every month because they hate this place.
That's wild, man. That's wild. So you moved over to the States at 11. I mean, was that for dad to kind of, you know, transition to this atmosphere in the music world?
No, I mean, no, definitely not. Actually, well, my dad retired, kind of, I mean, quote unquote retired. I mean, it didn't end up being a retirement at all. But him and my parents like separated when I was probably about 4 or 5. So I moved with my mom over here to the States because I think she, you know, she wanted a change of scenery, and she also wanted to, you know, further her business and stuff. And that's just kind of how it happened. And then eventually my dad came over as well. But yeah, I mean, there was so my dad, you know, it was funny when he was moving to Switzerland, everybody was there, was like, you're moving here, we're trying to leave, you know what I mean? Like, we're trying to get out. But he enjoys the kind of peace and quiet over there, you know.
Yeah, which you know, we always hear about how you know, like New Orleans, right? New Orleans, they don't allow paparazzis, you know, like anywhere. It's like some kind of strict thing that they've had going on. So we have a lot of celebrities who live in New Orleans, and which is incredible because, you know, that's the kind of, it's really cool having, like, you know, people you love and seeing them walk around in a market and things like that. But New Orleans doesn't allow, like, you know, TMZ and things like that to chase people down. And so a lot of people just flock there, and because it's more peaceful, you know, it's really, really nice. And I don't know if you've been to New Orleans, man, but
I have. I went one time, but I was probably too young to really enjoy New Orleans to its, you know, I was like 15 or something. So
oh man, you could have at least went to got yourself a po' boy and you know, Cold Stone Creamery ice cream. I mean,
yeah,
you know, I definitely enjoy New Orleans for the food, and that's about it. You know, I go get my food and I leave.
Yeah.
You know, that should be the way that all states kind of run the paparazzi TMZ thing, man. Now that I think about it, it's kind of like, it's almost like being treated like you're an animal in the zoo, which is also wrong. But I mean, that's almost how it comes off to me. You know, I mean, when you're that big, I mean, worldwide known, and you can't go and get, let's say, Cold Stone ice cream, you know, that's kind of scary. Everybody wants to be famous. Everybody wants to be large. I mean, but that comes with some ramifications as well, though, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of scary.
It does, man. It does.
So was music always the end game for you, man? Or, I mean, let's continue at 11, you know? I mean, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I mean, when I moved to Miami, that's kind of when things changed. I mean, drumming was always kind of a part of my life. I mean, like, pretty much from the get-go. As soon as I came back from hospital after being born, my dad put me on his lap, and, you know, I was touching drums. And, you know, we actually a few months ago came across some, like, old, like, you know, family, you know, home video footage of all that stuff, which was awesome, you know, for me to see, because I'd never really seen that. And you kind of forget these moments, and to be able to have like some tangible thing that you can watch is it's really nice. And, you know, to see that kind of part of your life. But yeah, kind of like immediately that's what I gravitated towards. I just wanted to play drums. And my dad would kind of sit me down and, you know, give me pointers, give me a few lessons. I mean, he never gave me real lessons. It was more just like he would give me things that he thinks I should work on. And I was just always just, you know, playing drums pretty much all the time. And then I used to, at one point in my life, I wanted to be a soccer player when I grew up, because I love watching soccer, and I love soccer in general. And then when I moved to Miami, I realized I wasn't that good. So, and then I started playing in bands, and then as soon as that kind of, when I really started investing myself into music is when I was like, you know what, this is what I want to do, 100%. I think everybody in my family knew that's kind of what I wanted to do. And maybe the soccer thing was a phase because, like, when you're a kid and you're in like second grade or third grade, like you want to be everything, one day you want to be an astronaut and the next day you want to be a freaking cop or something, like, you know what I mean? Like there's always something. But yeah, no, drumming always, like, was a part of my life and a part of, what I wanted to do, in the big picture.
I guess we can ask, did it come naturally for you? Or because I know you said your dad didn't really teach you, but, was it natural for you to start drumming?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think there's this thing of like, I mean, drummers are kind of like a special case. And I always hate like saying this thing because it's so like, oh, look, I'm a drummer. Like, you know what I mean? That's not really the vibe I'm trying to give off. But it's, drummers do have this thing where, like, ultimately you either can do it or you can't. Even when you're a little kid and you're not a good drummer, you can still tell there's like, some sort of rhythm there.
Yeah, that's true.
I see it in tons of kids where I'm like, yeah, that guy's got it. Like, but so that it was always kind of there. And then when I moved over to the States is when I started taking actual lessons and really like improving my technique and stuff that, like, because before it's like you play along to songs, but there isn't a real understanding and the concept of drumming, I mean, but nowadays you see these kids who are like 6 years old and they're like insane at whether it's drumming or, playing guitar. Or I saw this kid on Instagram who like is operating an entire, DAW thing, and he's like 4 years old, and I'm like, that's insane. But yeah, I mean, so when I kind of really started investing in myself, that's when that's when it became, more of like a coherent thing. But I, at the beginning, it was just kind of, it was kind of a natural thing that I always wanted to do it. Like I remember when my parents first got me my first real drum set, not some toy drum set. I was ecstatic. I was so happy. And there's lots of times where I would just look at it. I wouldn't even go and play it. I was just so happy that was my drum set. You know what I mean? I didn't have to bother my dad to sit on his lap anymore,
I'm sure he was hurt from that.
The whole biology conversation of all this and like and being hereditary type deal kind of blows me away, because in all honesty, none of that really makes sense, right? I mean, you're around it, you're in the tummy, you hear it. Your entire life has been based around music, but to be able to just pick up some sticks and as you said, have kind of what it takes. That's kind of fascinating to me. I mean, just to be a natural at it. When was the first time that you were like, hey, this could be something? I can make something out of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a kid, you don't really think about it that way. I mean, it was like when I was, when I really first started playing drums, I was probably like 3 or 4, where like I actually was sitting down and doing stuff. But, it's like you're playing around and, like when I was around that age, I was with my dad on his final farewell tour, which was like until the one we finished recently, the Not Dead Yet tour. That was his last solo, tour. Mm-hmm. And I was there and I was watching the show, and I would memorize these parts and these songs, and I'd play along to them and sing them, and just, really kind of off pitch, like kind of like thing like that while I was doing it. And that's kind of what I really was doing all the time. And I just really enjoyed it. I really had fun. And then, when I moved and I started playing in bands together, in bands with people, and that's when you start realizing, because for the most part, I was just playing drums by myself. I'd never played with another musician for the most part until I kind of moved over here and started playing, whether it was school bands or bands I was making with my friends. And then that was kind of, that was always like, oh yeah, like I want to do this for a living. But then when I started playing with the bass player in my band now, Nic Collins in Better Strangers, and that when we started playing together, I was like, oh yeah, this is for real. Like, I'm like, wow. That's when you sense this kind of musical connection and this kind of understanding with somebody. And then it makes sense, like being in a band, all of a sudden it clicks, So I think that, and then obviously our guitarist, Joey Rodriguez, when he joined, it was like, oh, 100%, like this is what I want to do. These are the, it's so important for like young musicians when you find those guys, that you understand and that like they're, you know, you're on the same page. I mean, because that's also when I really started diving into the music that I like and that I listen to, because really for the first part of my life, you know, from like being a baby until I was like 8 years old, what was playing was always like whether it was my dad's stuff or Genesis stuff, you know, because that's like, it was, you know, I that was what I was hearing on the road. So I just wanted to listen to those songs all the time. And I'm sure it drove my dad nuts. You know what I mean? We'd be in the car on the way home from school and I'd go on his iPod and just like, you know, play these songs. But then when I started, you know, really playing in bands, that's when I kind of found what I like and, you know, what I want to do and the kind of stuff that, you know, develops you as a musician, you know?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So what was the very first band? I mean, the name, the people, what was that like? I mean, because a lot of kids out there, right? I mean, we hear about them all the time. Hey, I got a garage band here. I got a band here. I got a band here. But like, what was that, I guess, chemistry like right off the bat? I mean, did you know right away, hey, these are my people for now, you know?
Yeah. I mean, so like me and Yannick, we've known each other since, so we've met each other as soon as I moved in 7th grade. That was like, I was a year ahead. So I was 11, but I should have been in 6th grade, but I was in 7th grade. And it was a funny story. He was just this random kid and he tore his ACL, and I didn't have a lot of friends when I first moved to Miami. So because he tore his ACL, he got put in like one of the front tables in our history class, and that was next to me. And then we just hit it off. We became friends.
Wow.
And funnily enough, his bar mitzvah was that weekend, and he didn't invite me because we didn't know each other enough. And so I always hold him against that, you know, like we're best friends and you just didn't even invite me to your bar mitzvah, man. But so we knew each other, and I'd been playing with some other people because when we started actually playing music together, I was in my freshman year. So I was probably like 13 or 14. So before that, I'd been playing with some people and it was just fun, but I mainly focused it, you know, as a drummer's perspective. I didn't really care what they were doing. I was playing drums and like, you know, if it sounds good, it sounds good. And I was playing in school bands too, which that, you know, being in a school band, I was in this band. It was kind of like we were just doing contemporary music. And there was a few people that you kind of like really understood, and still some of them that I'm, you know, that I'm still friends with now. But then when me and Yang, well, we call him Yannick, when we started playing together for real, that's when it was like, you know, there was this kind of understanding of like, you know, because we like the same music, because we, you know, we're so close that it just kind of, we started to develop that chemistry. And then when Joey joined, probably, you know, just under a year later, that was when we were, you know, just kind of slid in perfectly, you know. And that was back then when, you know, I was probably like 15 when Joey joined, something like that. And we've been in bands together ever since. Like every band that we've been in, you know, I've been in 3 different bands, but it's been us 3 as the musicians in it. It's just been, you know, different singers, you know. And so it's been this thing that like, you know, years of, and honestly, it's not even that long of a, you know, compared to some bands we've been together for like 50 years or whatever it is. You know, but for us, it's like this, you know, real chemistry that just developed, and just over the years is now this like this thing where when we're writing, everybody knows what everybody's thinking, you know. It's like and it's this really awesome thing that, you know, even if people are just playing music for fun, when you have those guys that like you can really play music with, and it's not just like some kind of like really superficial gig where you're just kind of like, you don't, you know, you're just there to play drums. But when you're actually like having a good time with people that, you know, you enjoy their company and you enjoy playing with them, like that's a really awesome thing, you know.
Yeah, that's an experience that I think a lot of young, and it doesn't even relate to music. I mean, yeah, you can relate to anything.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're enjoying what you're doing, that says something, right? I mean, because we see, you were just talking about, hey, that doesn't seem like that long ago when you compare it to bands that have been doing it, blah, da, 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 da. But we've seen on stage people that you can tell, yes, we've been doing it for a long time, but when that, I wouldn't say love isn't there, because obviously they love it, but when it's just going through the motions because you're supposed to, because you're being paid to, you can feel that in the audience. I mean, at least we can, you know?
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, you know, it's a, you know, there's another band that reminds me of that is, you know, like Emblem 3.
Yeah.
Right. You know, like Emblem 3 isn't this huge band. They're doing the music they're doing because they love it. You know, they're enjoying it. And same thing with you guys, man. You know, it's always good when you guys are, you know, and I understand everybody gets, you know, there are people who get the big break, they get famous, they go on world tours and they're huge, you know, selling out arenas. But it's always amazing when we see, I'm not going to refer to like garage bands, but like it's always good to see people like you guys doing your thing, loving what you're doing, because it is important to, you know, especially when you're in a band, to actually enjoy what you're doing, you know.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, obviously, you know, that's the goal ultimately, is to, you know, to be an arena band, but you know, you got to go through, you know, the stuff that bands go through. I mean, that's why there's so many artists today that are very short-lived, because you got to go through the really, you know, bad shows, the really kind of grimy and dirty venues, because that's what makes, you know, that's what being a band's about. You know, you got to have those arguments with your band members. You got to be able to like write music. You know, you can't just like get together and all of a sudden it's like, oh, you know, let's go play Wembley Stadium. You know what I mean? Like, that just doesn't work like that.
Be nice though.
It would. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would much rather be playing Wembley Stadium than a grimy venue, but you got to do it. And, you know, and slowly you get those, you know, those moments where you feel the kind of like worth of it. And, you know, you know, for one bad show, you're going to have, you know, 3 great ones. And it makes it's like, wow, like, you know, that was for real, you know. And it's all about just doing what, you know, what being in a band was. I mean, you know, bands like, you know, whether it was Nirvana or the Chili Peppers or anybody, like they were going and doing all that stuff too. You know, you just got to put the work in and, you know, develop, because also there's a lot of bands who just break out. I mean, especially now with TikTok, like they just become huge and they don't even sound like a band yet, because they don't know their sound, because the reason they blew up was because they're doing covers, right? So it's not even their stuff. And then they haven't even had the chance. I mean, like, you know, me, Yannick and Joey, since we've been playing for so long, like we've gone through our phases of musicianship like together. You know, we had one stage where all we were writing is stuff that sounded like the Chili Peppers, and then one time we were just doing stuff that sounded like the Foo Fighters. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And so you have those waves, and eventually you develop this thing that's coherent and becomes your thing. You know?
Yeah, Nick.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, you brought up Chili Peppers. Anthony Kiedis wrote a book called Scar Tissue. I don't know if you've read it or not.
I have it. I started it. I actually hate reading, but I need to like read that one.
Audible, bro. I listen. So I shouldn't call it reading. My wife gets mad at me. She's like, "You're not actually reading it. Stop saying this book you read because you didn't read it." Anyways, I listened to it on Audible quite a few times, and that story kind of is your origin story if you really think about it, because he met Flea in the 5th grade, right? And those two went through rounds and rounds and rounds of ups and downs and different members of the band until they finally stuck with what they have now. And even then, you know, they go ups and downs and they have people come and go. But you're right. They are where they are because of the ups and the downs, and then trying to find that right cohesiveness, man. So I think that says a lot from what you just said, that you're on the right track, brother.
I mean, the Chili Peppers, like as a band, were like our first kind of like, you know, our first heroes. You know, because everybody has individual inspirations and stuff, but the Chili Peppers as a group, like that was like, we want to be the Chili Peppers. Like there was like this thing that we just loved so much about them. And that, you know, whenever we had, you know, since we've been playing in bands, you know, for the past like 6 years, I think, and we've had different singers or we've had different members, and it's always been us 3. You know, eventually, because you're so confident in like, you know, the feeling that you have playing with them, like you just go, okay, like this is not, you know, we'll find somebody and this is fine. Like you don't panic. You don't go like, you know what, like I don't know about this. You know what I mean? Like we never had that feeling when we were going through those kinds of, you know, changes and those, you know, all that stuff that bands go through. You know, that's just a part of life as well, because that's also the thing, is when you're playing in bands when you're young, you know, not everybody there wants to do music professionally, you know.
That's true.
Like some people are just doing it because it's fun, and that's totally fine. And even people who like, you know, if people like playing drums just because they like it, that doesn't mean you got to be for real in a band, you know what I mean? Like you don't have to, that's not what kind of music and being in a band is about. But you know, you learn to kind of like, that's just the reality of it. You don't just, you know, not everybody there wants to do the same thing that you want to do.
Definitely. And I mean, you know, it's important to that you recognize that, because, you know, this whole thing, what you're going through with just being in a band, you know, it starts off with being at the bottom. It starts off, you know, being a process. And, you know, I used to tell a friend of mine who's in a band, he, you know, they weren't really sure what direction, because like you had said, you know, they would go different styles, different things, you know. And I used to tell them all the time, you know, trust the process. You know, it's every time you change is a you know, another part of that process to get to where you're gonna go. But I mean, I've listened to your music already, and especially Better Strangers, but and I love it. Like personally, I've never gotten gotten to listen to your music until the other day. And I usually take a whole day when we have someone on the show. I usually take an entire day, and just that whole day is, you know, Spotify usually. And what you guys are doing is great work, man. You know,
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it. Really excited to see where you guys go. You know, whether you turn to another direction, whether you go, you know, with the style, with, you know, whatever, you know, it's all part of a process. And but you guys are, you know, it takes work, like you said, it takes time. And you know, but you guys are continuing to move forward all these years later. It's a good sign for you guys, you know.
Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate that.
Of course.
You had brought up the process of the writing process, right? Kind of sit us down. We haven't had a guest quite like you on for about, you know, 20 episodes that actually sits down and pens the songs, you know. So talk about let's just use Better Strangers for example. When you guys get together, what's that writing process like?
Well, so right now our singer Ricky, well, he's known as DeCasa. He lives in Texas, so he's not here all the time. So the way we kind of go about it is the three, me, Yang, and Joey, you know, I guess you'd call it the musicians. We get together like 4 times a week, and if we're not rehearsing for, you know, a gig or demoing, like what we're doing, we're always writing. And everybody kind of has a bit of knowledge in every instrument. I mean, I play guitar and piano as well as playing drums. And then Yang plays a bit of guitar, and Joey plays a bit of bass and a little bit of piano too. So we are always kind of coming, like, you know, there's no limits as to who can come up with what. And somebody will come up with an idea, and we'll just hash it out and, you know, like figure out a structure, figure out, you know, something that we're content with, which is quite rare, because we were looking through our, you know, especially when we're writing, it's like we'll have like 30 songs, and out of the 30 songs we wrote, like 7 of them are good, you know, the rest are, but you got to go through the really bad songs to get the good songs, really. I mean, that's what you learn, because sometimes it gets really depressing actually, and you're like, it's been like 3 weeks since we've done something that, like, you know, you go home, you're like, wow, this is sick, you know, but you got to do it. And then once we come up with something that's good, that we like, we'll send it over to our singer and see what he thinks as far as like structure, as far as parts, you know, melodies, keys, whatever. And then once we kind of get something that's kind of solid, he'll start writing lyrics over. I mean, he's the lyricist and, you know, melody maker of the band. Like, that's just what he does. And it's actually been a really cool thing, because like for us, like, I mean, you know, primarily we're all rock guys, as in, I mean, the 3 musicians, and I mean, all 4 of us are real rock guys anyways. But when we write something that may be quite heavy, he'll come and put something that's completely different on it that like you wouldn't expect. Like that, I've stopped kind of expecting something, you know, like I've stopped predicting what's going to happen. I'm just like, he's probably going to lay down something that I wouldn't even have thought of, you know, because he has a big kind of hip hop background and very indie alternative vibe. So what he ends up coming up with is always kind of a real nice, like, fresh thing. Especially in like today's industry, where like rock is kind of like taking a backseat for the most part, you know, and everything. So yeah, that's kind of how that goes. I mean, you know, I'm always kind of fiddling on, you know, guitar or stuff like at home, but, you know, not like now there's also, when we're writing, everybody kind of knows their place, you know, because like our guitarist, when him and the bass player are trying to figure out something like melodically, you know, I shut up. I play drums, like I let them figure it out. But then if we're talking about some rhythmic stuff, me and the bass player, the guitarist knows, like, I'll let them sort that out before I get involved,
Yeah.
So it's a real, it's a cool thing. It's a very collective process. We've never had one guy who just writes everything, and then tells everybody what to do, just because, just that's never really been fruitful, and B, never kind of, it's just never kind of been what we do. So yeah, that's kind of it for the most part. And it's kind of a straightforward thing. And you're always trying to experiment with new ways of writing, like maybe having the vocals come first and then us writing something on top of it. That's just kind of like the standard way that we go about it.
Wow. I guess we can ask you, what's the hardest thing about being in a band?
Yeah.
I think the hardest thing about being in a band is, it's just dealing with other people. That's just, you just got to get used to, like, everybody. Especially in a band like us, like, we're not, there's some bands that's like, there's the guy, it's like the Beatles, like John Lennon, Paul McCartney, they're kind of those writers. And then Ringo and George Harrison would kind of just, although they wrote, George Harrison's my favorite Beatle. He wrote the best songs, but that's, a conversation for another day.
Agreed.
But that's kind of the vibe that it was. You have some bands like that, there's one, like, Radiohead, it's really Tom York's band. At least that's how I kind of feel. And when I listen to it, although, I love Radiohead, but for us, it's a very collective thing. It's very, like, everybody has equal, say and equal, everything about the band. And so dealing with people's opinions, if you don't agree with them, like, that's something that it just takes getting used to. And then you realize that, like, it's a healthy thing to have disagreements, because you end up coming to something that everybody's satisfied with, or not, because compromise means that nobody ends up being happy. But but for the most part, it's just about, like, learning how to deal with disagreements and stuff like that. That's probably the toughest part about being in a band, because everybody's trying to, like, do it the best way they think, but that's not always what everybody else thinks, and learning to not get offended. That's like the big thing, especially with us. We're very, very harsh on each other. That's kind of our humor anyways. Like, it's like, that's just always been how it is. We had one person come into rehearsal and they're like, this is unhealthy. This is a really unhealthy, like, workspace. And we're like, what are you talking about? Like,
this is us.
Yeah. But that's just, I think that's probably the most difficult part. And then when you want to be in a band for real and doing it, like, professionally and trying to, make money from it, dealing, like, learning how the real world works, especially in the music industry, that's that's kind of what we've been dealing with for the past 2 years. It's like, wow, like, there's much more than just writing music and playing together. There's a lot of stuff that you got to deal with that is not fun, and that's probably the most difficult thing, I would say.
We definitely got our taste, and for our podcast, we're the only two people involved, which I think personally makes it easier. We've had a couple of different people come on as sponsors, and we thought it was the greatest thing at first, until they started telling us how to run our show and what to say on the show, what to not say, and it became very uncomfortable very, very quick, to where we made the best decision ever, drop them. Because the Frickin' Frack Show is, the Matthew Taylor and Caleb Bryan show, and it's always important to, if you or if he and I say we want things to be this way, it's going to be this way, and we've been to a few, we've been to an event, and it's, everything went great and it was amazing, but, like, coming back to the show, made us very, very grateful, because it's just us and whatever we want to do, whoever we want to have on the show, we're able to there's no one controlling, and I know with the business side of it, it gets difficult, especially for you guys, like, booking gigs. I can't imagine, what you guys have to.
No, as especially now, it's just like it's just finding people you trust, which isn't easy. It's not straightforward. Whether it's you're going with management or booking agents or stuff like that, you got to find a team that, like, they get what you're trying to do. I mean, that's
Yeah.
like really been the biggest thing is like, you know, when you find somebody that really understands what you're trying to do as a band and as an artist, like
Yeah.
that makes sense. I mean, it's, you know, like kind of like with your show, like when somebody understands like what you guys are about,
Yeah.
that's when it makes sense to kind of move forward with somebody.
Oh,
But
yeah.
when, you know, when you're kind of getting these opinions, it's, I mean, you know, even when we were like, you know, I mean, I say kids, I mean, it was because it was like 6 years ago when we were dealing with some people and, you know, they kind of wanted us to be, you know, something we're not. Like, I mean, you know, it's like
Ooh.
4 young guys in a band. It's like, well, you guys could be like the next, like, you know, I don't know, One Direction or 5 Seconds of Summer. And it's like, yeah, but like I don't know, you're 15, so you're kind of like, I don't know, I guess, like, and then it's just like, you know, it ends up being really awful, you know.
I would definitely say it. If someone told me that, I'd be excited. As much as I love boy bands, as much as we love boy bands, if someone said you could be the next not One Direction, let's just say 5 Seconds of Summer, you know, I would be very stoked. But then, you know, being who you are, you know, as a band, let's say, that would not be suitable.
No, definitely not. I mean, that's just not been our thing, you know. I mean, ultimately, like, you know, we're musicians is really what it is. I mean, you know, we want to make it and we want to be a success, but you know, we don't like that doesn't have value if you're not if you don't believe in what you're making, really. You know, it's like if you don't think what you're making is good, but you're getting 10 million streams, like that's great, but like, you know, what's the point? I mean, you know, anyway, streams don't make you any money anyway, so really, what's the point? You know,
it's pretty insane too with streaming, man. So you said you're 20 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 20 years ago, you know, it's what, 2001 or so. So let's say from that time on to now, you know, the way the streaming platforms have taken over, the way social medias, you know, have taken over, man. What are your thoughts on that kind of stuff, man? I mean, I know it helps, you know, I know it does help.
It's kind of like, I mean, there's 2 sides to it. I mean,
Yeah.
Spotify now is like it's a necessary kind of evil is really what it is. I mean, it really screws over artists. Like artists don't make any money at all, and you know, it's not about making money, but you still got to make a living from what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like there's people who put like hours and hours and, you know, blood, sweat, and tears into a record, and then you get like a good amount of streams, and you know, it's like you get something like a quarter of a penny for a stream, you know, from Spotify. But everybody uses Spotify. I use Spotify, you know what I mean? Like I feel horrible to do it, but I use it, you know. It's just what you kind of have to do. I mean, I think you know, back in the day, I've always said this. I mean, whenever I'm talking about it with my friends and anybody, I always kind of bring up the fact that like in 1970 or, you know, or I would probably say 1970, you make a record and then you tour to promote your record. So people buy your record because that's how you're going to make money, you know. Whereas now you make a record to promote your tour, you know, because your tours
are true.
Your tours are what makes all the money, and the whole reason you go on tours because you're promoting a new record. So there's like a new light show or there's a new vibe to it. But really, you know, that's why there's so many artists. I mean, I think there's you know, especially now like the resurgence of vinyl, which has kind of been like a recent thing. People are back to kind of making real records, but for the most part, I mean, you kind of go, if you look at the pop charts, you know, somebody's record will have the first 3 songs will be the singles, and then the rest is like, you know, the other 7 songs on the 10-track LP is just going to be filler because nobody really cares. You know what I mean? Like what matters are those 3 singles, especially like with TikTok and stuff, you know, who needs a record anyways, when you can put a single out that blows up on TikTok. And now, you know, whether it's Addison Rae or whoever is like the biggest artist at the moment, it's like you have 1 song and it sucks. You know what I mean? Like,
bro, there's so much truth to that statement. Hold on right there. Let's talk about that for a second. With TikTok and people like Addison Rae, how has that changed how you go about the writing process or the producing process? I mean, it kind of has to flicker something in your mind, right?
Production wise, you definitely have to feel like you're competing with like, okay, this production value with the mix in it and like the, you know, the effects and the sounds, like it's going to hold up against something like that, I guess. But it definitely changes the way you write, not so much, but more in the way where when you're writing, especially when you're kind of like writing a record or an EP, or, you know, you put a lot more thought of like, we need a single, like we need something that like could get played on the radio, or somebody could listen to it. I mean, the whole thing with TikTok, which has been tough, is people we've spoken to are like, you got to get on TikTok. And we're like, okay, but none of us have TikTok. You know, I get whatever funny TikToks I watch is from my Instagram. You know what I mean? Like they get like fed through there, but we don't have TikTok, so we don't really know how it works. And we posted like 4 TikToks, and they're awful because we don't know, you know, what to do. And don't get me wrong, you know, some people who really mastered TikTok, like it's great. I mean, I know people who have kind of their recent musical careers are built off their presence on TikTok. You know what I mean? Like they're getting so many streams and listens because they have followers on TikTok. But you know, there's so much thought of like, you got to develop like a trend for this. And I'm like, yeah, but like, that's just not what we do. I mean, you know, there is this kind of thing where, you know, there's a difference between like being successful and being like really, really mainstream, because there's lots of rock bands who are successful and they're touring and they have plenty of fans and they're playing these great gigs and great big venues. But, you know, there isn't that relevancy. Whereas like, you know, back in the day, you know, in like the late 70s, early 80s, like the Police were the biggest thing ever. And everybody loved the Police and everybody was talking about the Police. Now it's like, if you know a certain artist, like, yeah, you'll talk about them. But like when you look at, you know, any like news article or like, you know, whether it's E! News or Daily Mail or whatever, it's just about the TikTokers. Like nobody really cares about anybody else.
It is,
which in a way is a good thing. I mean, you know, you're kind of doing stuff where people will listen to your stuff and you're not really put in that kind of main, you know, focus, I guess. But at the same time, it just shows that like, you know, this is the kind of fad at the moment, and that's kind of what's big. And you just kind of learn to live with it, really. I mean, that's kind of the thing with all the streaming stuff.
There used to be a lot of there used to be a word, you know, that not many people are familiar with, but it's called original. You know, and my experience of you know, I've done a couple TikToks of like covers, just singing and everything, but my experience of just looking at TikTok is everybody just copying, you know, those the dances and things like that. And you know, there's just no originality, I guess you can say, with TikTok. It just seems like I don't spend much time on TikTok like so many people. There's a lot of people say it's addicting, and I'm like, I just look at it and it makes me turn it off. I mean, it's just terrible. You know?
But yeah, it's just kind of part of the industry at the moment. You know, I mean, that's like, there's labels, they look at your numbers, that, you know, but what I've kind of learned, at least, is like, there's so many people who are pressed on having an Instagram presence, a TikTok presence, and none of that matters if you don't have songs that people like and that people listen to. You know, like it's just this whole kind of joke of like people being like, yeah, but you got to post every day, you got to have interaction with your fans. I'm like, yeah, that's great and all, but if nobody's listening to your music, then it doesn't matter if you post every day, because nobody's going to show up to your show. You know what I mean? That's just kind of the reality of it, you know.
It's true. And you know, going back to the concerts that you were talking about, you know, my experience, Vicky and I go to a lot of concerts, most of the time, a lot of times twice a week, even, especially if we have different people coming. And a lot of these concerts, you know, they'll say the title is you know, the album, their new album, and you go to the concerts and you're expecting them to promote the album, but they do maybe like 1, maybe 2 songs out of 28, you know, 30 songs from the new album. You know, which I understand, everybody's got to do the hits, right? Everybody has to do them, but it's just so, you know, we went to see Jonas Brothers the other night, and they had only done like 3 songs on the new album. And I was really impressed with their latest album. And I you know, I was like, man, I was like, I thought, you know, it was supposed to promote the newest album, but
yeah, I went to go see Maroon 5 and they did the same thing. Like I'm talking, this is like probably 4 years ago that I went to go see them. And I mean, I love their first record. I mean, I think the rest is kind of whatever, but their first record was amazing. And they played so much of that first record, and I'm like, aren't you guys on like a tour of promoting your new record? Like what's, but they like half of the set was the first record, and it was crazy.
Oh yeah, and that first record was a killer, man.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much every time they come out with a song, I definitely have to listen to it, because I mean, it's Adam and his vocals are, even today still amazing, but it's just weird how the industry, like you said, there's fads, so like, well, there's phases, and we always say like, all right, so pop is going to be popular right now for the next 3 or 4 years, and then rock's going to come back for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then rap's going to take over the charts again for another 2 or 3 years. And it seems like it's been that way for a long time.
Yeah, there's always these cycles. I mean,
Yep.
like right now, I mean, the biggest thing, as much as like, I mean, right now the biggest thing is hip hop. I mean, like it's just like like the charts. It's full of the amount of streams they get. I mean, that's what's selling right now. But you kind of need these kind of phases. I mean, I'm kind of like a, hopeful, romantic when it comes to like rock music being back. I'm like, COVID, it's like it's the perfect time. People are pissed off, and then it's all that stuff. But who knows? I mean, it's you look at every single phase of every resurgence. Like in the 80s, you had the whole kind of hair metal disco thing, and then Nirvana came and just completely destroyed that. And they're like, we're gonna define what the 90s are about. You know what I mean? Like, and the same thing happened when you had really bad 2000s pop music, and then all of a sudden hip hop just became this thing where everybody was listening to it, so it's just one of those things. I mean, you have bands who really kind of I guess outlive those phases, which is awesome to see. I mean, you see a band like Foo Fighters who are still like the biggest selling. I mean, one thing that I will say is as kind of bad as rock is doing in the charts, they're still the biggest selling, shows, you got, whether it's Guns N' Roses or Foo Fighters or Kiss or whoever, they're still selling out stadiums every, Chili Peppers just announced a stadium tour, that
can't wait.
Yeah,
I know,
me too.
Can't wait.
I know. I was supposed to go see Chili Peppers a couple years ago, and we ended up not being able to go. And it's always been a regret of mine because I mean, it's the Chili Peppers,
Yeah.
And they're but like rock concert wise, we've been to Guns N' Roses, when Guns N' Roses started their tour 6 years ago. It was their first comeback. Many comebacks, but like all the first time all the band was getting along. Sobriety was taking place. And it was actually the night that the day Vicky and I met for the first time. And I remember asking her, "Hey, you want to go see Guns N' Roses?" She's like, "I just met you," And it's Guns N' Roses, man. I can tell you from experience, a rock concert is unlike many concerts.
Really, I've never seen them live.
Well, it was 3 hours.
That's what I've heard. It's really long.
It felt like 45 minutes to me. First of all, I'm a vocalist guy. I love vocals. I'm very harsh and critical on productions and things. But at that time, because Axl had just started touring, he sounded incredible. It was the most. I brought my best friend and who had never been to a lot of concert. He never been to anything like that. It was I mean, they had fireworks, they had everything in a closed center, made me kind of wonder. But it's rock concerts, man, are just incredible, and it really does, it really makes me sad just looking at the Billboard Top 100 and seeing, let's just say 5, rock songs and 98% of it rap, or whatever it is, because we go back. I'm sure you remember Creed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like people like that. Who was the people who sang "Hero"? Not Switchfoot. There's these guys who sang. I don't know. They were like bunch of different music. Like the early 2000s was a lot of rock, and then 2000. I don't know, 2004, 2005 happened. And I don't know, like pop and rock kind of started going away. And then I think it was like 2007 when autotune incorrectly used was introduced.
Yeah.
And it seems like that phase, that part of this music, journey, kind of changed everything, because people figured out, of course it was, T-Pain who introduced it, to zero speed. And that's all. I mean, literally all he did was put a zero, and then he was able to, do auto-tune the way he did. And for years and years, like, man, that was I'm sure you remember, like, that was a long time of nothing but auto-tune on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say the last couple years was when things started changing again, and then country and rap were introduced.
Rap, I'm fine with. It's country. It's just, oh my god.
But it's a different kind of rap, right? It's not like you guys were talking about hip hop taking over. Like, we have way different definitions of what hip hop is, I think, because that.
Well, like, what I love in hip hop, although there's some good artists now. I mean, like old kind of 90s gangster hip hop, like that was it, man. Like that's awesome. I still love that stuff. But you kind of need the really kind of extremes of bad in the music industry, because it makes, like now people like use auto-tune pretty artistically, and I think it's kind of cool. They do. And but even like now in the pop charts, like whether it's Billie Eilish or Olivia Rodrigo, like they're starting to make some songs that aren't just very kind of like, I guess superficial is the only way I know how to describe like kind of the pop charts for the last few years. They're making stuff that's actually kind of a bit more genuine, which is kind of nice to hear. I mean, it's got a bit, it's got instruments, which is great.
It's got real vocals.
But there's this kind of wave of people doing some cool stuff now, kind of on the pop charts. But I also think that the charts have meant the least they have in decades. Like the charts do not matter now. Like getting a number one, what does that really mean nowadays? Like back then it meant it was pretty substantial, and now it's just kind of like, man, I don't even know what's on the charts right now. I don't check it.
If I had to guess, Olivia Rodrigo, every single song, which is great, because she her Sucker, I don't know what it's called, her sour album was absolutely brilliant. I mean, I felt what she was singing about, and that's something we also don't have on the charts today too, man, is like things that are like, that you can relate to or even feel. It's so, that's why, you're absolutely right, though. The charts are so, irrelevant to what it used to be, because, I mean, you can go look in 1998 charts and see, and you'd be like, I loved every single 20 of these. And now you can look in now and say, I don't know a single one of these, and I've never heard it. It's crazy.
It's true, man. Hey, so we've got you for about 10 more minutes, man. We won't hold you up much longer, but I think we would be doing ourselves an injustice if we didn't talk about this. Following in such an icon's footsteps, right? I kind of want to dive into this for a little bit and kind of give us an insight into, your mind frame back then.
I mean, honestly, like, it was never like this thing that was like pushed upon me. I mean, people always ask like, what's it like having Phil Collins as your dad? And I'm like, well, you have a dad. It's the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, that was like, cause to me, he was just dad, but there was, when he was on stage, like, he was like my hero. I mean, when I was little, I was just so in awe of him and, drumming and everything. So but he never made it. It was never this thing that was kind of there. I mean, sometimes you sense it, and there's definitely this kind of sense of expectation for myself, like in life, to amount to something, you know what I mean? But at the same time, like, it's never been, everybody has their own thing going on, like it, and it's also a different time, but like, with like what I'm doing with my band, and like, that's kind of, my passion project that I do. And I never hold that in kind of comparison to what my dad did, because it's two different things, But then again, like, doing his tour, when we did the Not Dead Yet tour, which we did for like almost, 3 years or something like that. It was a long time. But that was like, some of the best times I've had, like, being able to play that music that I grew up with, and I remember watching when I was a kid, was just really special. And I share those memories with my dad. But when we've started doing this Genesis thing, which has been like an absolute treat to be a part of, to be on stage with those guys is like a real kind of special thing. Well, like not only for the fans seeing them, it is this really powerful thing that they have, but also seeing my dad in this context of like I never really knew him as a band member. I knew him as a solo artist and as his thing. But seeing him in a context where he's in a band and also diving into when I was learning the songs, like knowing him as a drummer, that's been a really kind of awesome thing for me. But it never really kind of, I never really felt this kind of thing of like, oh my God, I've got to follow in his thing because we're, we're doing different things. But at the same time, like there are these kind of parallels, which it's kind of a cool thing too. But for the most part, I mean, it never really felt like that, but it's just this really cool thing to, I kind of see it more as like, somebody that I relate to, that I can talk to about different things at different, whether it's talking about music or writing, I got somebody right there who's been through it and knows how to go about it. And that's always kind of been on that front. I mean, he's never, even with like, when I write music with my band or when we're playing shows, like he's never told me what he thinks until I ask him for his opinion. Because he kind of lets it breathe. He's like, this is your thing. You know what I mean? And then if I ask him, then we can have a conversation about it. But ultimately, he's always been really kind of hands off on me, like he's not like a stage dad because, you know what I mean? Like that's the worst kind of thing that you could have is like these people who are super, like it always makes me really uncomfortable when I meet somebody and their parents are like so involved in their career. I'm like, dude, what's going on right now? Like,
yeah. There's always a crash.
Yeah, there is. I mean, I guess what we would like to know is when it comes down to the Genesis show, what can we expect from that? Like going as a viewer.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, like the Genesis, the set, and I mean the production is unbelievable. I mean, and it sucks because I've never really gotten to see it. I kind of see the behind me, and I've only seen like one full song where like when they were running like some tests last year when we were doing production rehearsals. But it's honestly, I mean, it kind of it's for every all Genesis fans, because I mean Genesis fans, for lack of a better word, they're very weird, and I don't mean that in like a weird way. I mean it like they're so specific about how they see Genesis. Like some people are like 1975, like they still resent my dad for becoming the singer because they want Peter Gabriel. But then there's some people who like hate the progressive stuff and are there because of like the songs like Invisible Touch, and you know what I mean?
Yep.
So. Yeah. But this show does a good job of kind of encompassing everything. I mean, it's a real kind of celebration of the stuff they did, and it does feel, really powerful. I mean, I'm there with Daryl Sturmer, who's the touring guitarist for my dad as well. We have Daniel and Patrick, who are two backing singers too. But for the most part, it's a band. You're going to see a rock show. There's a really big light show and video show going on. But ultimately, like when we go up there, and then when we leave, like it's a celebration of them three and what they did, because it's for the most part, a lot of it is music that, I mean, as I've started learning the stuff and, I mean, this dates back to probably almost 2 years ago because COVID completely ruined our plans to go out on the road when we were supposed to. But, from that, I've become a really big Genesis fan just because I love their music and the respect that I have for them as songwriters is a really awesome thing. So that's kind of, when you go up there, it's celebrating the stuff they did and celebrating the songs they wrote, because it's a big part of a lot of people's lives. A lot of people's like, I got married to this song, or, I remember being a kid when, Selling England by the Pound came out and it changed my life. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a really awesome thing because also for me, like I have my favorite records from the 70s and 60s, and that's kind of what I'm playing. It's not stuff that I grew up with because, I wasn't even a thought back then. You know what I mean? Like,
no,
it's like 50 years ago. But yeah, no, it's a really cool thing.
And I'm sure you've heard it before, but for your dad's song in the air tonight was most of the Baby Makers.
Yeah, well, that was one that I did grow up with. So when we played it, it was like ingrained into my head.
Yeah, man.
you get to be a part of history too, man. I mean, think about it. You're transcending time essentially. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're taking people back to a time that's different than what they're living through now, and you get to be a part of that, bro, on stage with
Yeah.
them. That's awesome.
That it is a really kind of thing that I've been really kind of grateful about, is just being able, because obviously, as I said, becoming a fan of the band, but also just knowing that there's lots of magnitude towards, Genesis getting back together. I mean, that's, that's, they, are very like, well, they're a genre defining band, and
They are.
and they just, were such a massive part of like 3 decades, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to be there is this kind of powerful thing. I mean, the first show we played, not only was it kind of emotional for everybody because it was, the first time we're playing to people in, in ages and seeing people in arenas, but it's also kind of a thing for them three where it's like they get to see that, and there's like, we did like a documentary when we were rehearsing. And when I said that to me, the really important thing is for them three to see that 50 years later, 40 years, depending on what song, their music still matters to people. You know what I mean? So to be able to be on stage when they kind of get to see that, it's an awesome thing because like, I'm there, I'm interpreting the songs they wrote, but I didn't write them. You know what I mean? So I can't even imagine the feeling of like, oh, I remember when we wrote this song like a Tuesday in 1972, and now it's like, 2021 and 20,000 people are singing along to it. So yeah, it's an awesome thing to kind of be a part of. And, I'm grateful and proud to be a part of it, but I'm also kind of, I also enjoy it on a kind of fan standpoint of just standing behind there and getting to see, them three doing their thing,
Oh yeah. I mean, it's definitely a beautiful thing, man. I mean, I never thought, Genesis would ever be back, in my lifetime. It just didn't seem, even your dad, when they had done, you guys had done the last tour, I would have never, I didn't get a chance to go, but like, it's the thought of, Phil Collins being back and doing all the songs we loved, it's a once in a lifetime kind of deal, especially for us, as much as I've listened to your father's records and Genesis, especially as a kid, it's surreal to me that they're back.
Yeah,
it's really, really exciting, man. It really is.
No, thank you. Yeah, it's
so you're a busy guy. I've got 2 questions for you. How do you manage to kind of separate one band from another and feel like you're not giving one, more effort than the other? And secondly, what's next for Nic Collins and what's next for Better Strangers?
So when it comes to like, dealing with different bands and stuff like that, like, I mean, I'm doing this Genesis thing now, and that is like, especially the guys in my band understand that it's a big deal, and they all, have always been supportive of me doing that. I mean, as soon as I stopped that Genesis tour, every time we finish a leg, or even when we were doing my, the Phil Collins thing, every time we finish a leg, I'm right back to doing band stuff. Like, give me one day to recover from jet lag, and I'll be at the studio the next day, and we'll start working. Because I do feel the need to kind of like, I did that, and now I'm yours again. You know what I mean? Like, because. But, when we're away, we're always in communication. I mean, when I was away just now, I mean, we kind of leave that time is really kind of, I guess, the business period where everybody's, handling stuff that it's not creative. It's more just like, setting up your trajectories and goals for the next X amount of months or whatever. So I've always tried to really consciously put 100% into making, committing myself to different projects no matter what they are. I mean, it's like as soon as the Genesis thing starts again, and in a almost like a week and a half or something like that, I don't know, I'm in Genesis world. Like, that's what I'm doing. I mean, I have time for everything else, but that's my focus. And then as soon as I come back, I'm right back into this. I mean, we finished, I flew home, and 2 days later we had a show with Better Strangers, and that's just kind of part of it right now. I mean, to be honest, I have to be kind of grateful that we're doing this, because after not being able to play a show for 2 years,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I'll play any show that I can at the moment, as long as it makes sense.
Oh yeah.
But and then for what's next, I mean, obviously we got this thing, the Genesis stuff, and then we announced some more dates in March in Europe. And then with Better Strangers, I mean, we just finished like a little, really tiny run of shows that we just did, and we're just keep on writing. There's lots of stuff in the works as far as new music and mixes going around, and so hopefully releasing some stuff and heading out on the road in January, February time. So that's the goal. That's kind of the plan for now.
It's exciting, man. That's exciting.
Yeah, thank you.
You've got a bright future ahead of you, my man, and to relive the past like you are too. Yeah, you're making people really happy. We'd love to have you back on once you guys go kick off a tour with Better Strangers again. To promote that. That'd be great.
Cool, man. No, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a great time.
Yeah, it's definitely really appreciate you coming on, and it's been everything we wanted it to be, which is always exciting when interviews go so well. And it's always just fun having people getting on and kind of learning more about them. And I feel like I'm more educated about Nic Collins now, so this is really, really good. And I can finally say a couple facts that I know about Nic Collins instead of Phil Collins, because my facts for Phil Collins is a couple pages long,
Hey man, I love that you're carving your own path, brother. You're a smart young man, and the future's bright for you guys. And let us know anything we can do to help, anything that you guys want to promote, man. We're here for you guys, and have a good Halloween Sunday, everybody. This is episode 63 for the fans, by the fans. Peace.
Yo, it's the freaking Frack Show, a podcast for the fans by